Hey guys, welcome back to Global Gardens. This week we are virtual and we are talking about energy and food webs. Also kind of talking about life cycles because the cycle of life relates to all of those things. Have any of you guys seen the movie Lion King? Do you remember that part where they're like holding Simba in the air and all the animals are singing Circle of Life? So, today we're going to talk kind of about the Circle of Life, or Lion King. Before I get started, let's talk about where does energy come from? Think about it. Where do I get energy to talk or run around or think? Where do you get energy to get dressed in the morning, to eat your breakfast? Where do you get energy? Where do dogs get energy to run around in circles all day? Where do cows get energy to get big and fat? Well, the secret is all energy comes from, are you ready for it? The sun. Crazy. So, how do we get energy from the sun? Because I don't know about you, but you don't sit outside and do photosynthesis, do you? No. But the sun gives energy to the plants. And through photosynthesis, the plants use sun energy and they make food in their own bodies. Plants are something called producers. They produce energy from the sun. So plants are producers. Then guess what? We are consumers. We get to eat those plants. And by eating those plants, we get energy. And then there's things called decomposers. Decomposers are what eats us when we die. So that is kind of the brief life cycle overview, but we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. So I just told you we get all of our energy from the sun. Not directly, but from the food that we eat. For example, this morning I ate some toast. Does anyone know what is toast made out of? Well, it's made out of bread. If you look closely, this bag of bread even has a picture of where that bread comes from. This bread comes from grain. Grain looks like this. It is a plant. And that plant grows outside and it gets its energy from the sun. So, the sun gives energy to this piece of grain. The grain is then used to make bread, so it's carrying the same energy that this plant had. So when I eat this bread, I am eating the same energy that that plant had a long time ago. So I'm basically eating sun energy when I eat my toast. Whoa. So, we know that toast gives us energy from the sun, but what about other things? Well, for example, I ate eggs for breakfast. And eggs come from chickens. And what do chickens eat? Where are chickens getting their energy? Well, guess what? Chickens also eat plants. They eat little pieces of grass, they eat seeds, sometimes they eat bugs, but they're getting their energy from plants. So even though I'm eating chicken, I'm actually eating the chicken's energy that he got from the plant, and the plant got energy from the sun. Okay, let's try something else. Let's try something not even in Oklahoma. What about a lion? So guys, think back to Lion King. What do the lions in Lion King eat? Well, the lions get energy by eating the gazelle, the cute little deer. And the gazelle, where do they get their energy? Well, gazelle and deer, they eat grass. So they get energy from the plants. And remember, where do the plants get energy from? The sun. Okay, so the sun gives energy to the plants, which gives energy to the gazelle, which gives energy to the lion. Now remember, we mentioned those terms, consumer, producer, decomposer. In the example of a lion, gazelle, and grass, who is the producer? The grass is a producer. The grass produces energy by using the sunlight to make energy in its own little grass body. And then our gazelle is going to be a consumer because the gazelle actually eats this plant. So the gazelle eats it, which means he's consuming the energy that the plant made. The lion is also a consumer. Instead of eating the plant itself, the lion eats the gazelle that ate the plant. So he is also still a consumer. Now, if our lion died and he's laying out in a field, Eventually flies are gonna come, and worms, and maybe roly-polies, and they're gonna eat up all his deadness. They are decomposers. Decomposers are any kind of animal, insect, fungi that breaks down already dead material and they turn it into compost. So we love decomposers, and decomposers kind of win in this whole scenario. But if you think about it, decomposers break down all of that energy and then they store it in the soil. What lives in a soil and grabs nutrients from the soil? Plants. So after decomposers decompose or break down all of those dead animal or dead plant materials, the plants are actually going to suck up those nutrients and it's going to go back in the whole cycle. That's why it's called the circle of life. Because the producers produce energy, the consumers eat it, but then the decomposers break that energy down, and then once again, the producers suck up that energy that they left in the soil. So that is the circle of life. Alrighty, we're going to talk a little bit about food webs now. So we just talked about kind of a food chain and producers, consumers, decomposers, and now we're going to talk more about a food web. A food web is the complicated scenario of how all energy is transferred everywhere. So for example, we're going to start out with a garden food web. Let's start with maybe the sun this time. The sun is giving energy to something we plant, say cabbage. We plant the cabbage. Who eats our cabbage? Well, two garden pests I frequently see would be caterpillars and rabbits. So, energy is transferred from the sun to the cabbage. And then when the bunnies or the caterpillars eat the cabbage, energy is being transferred from the cabbage to those two pests. Then, does anyone eat the caterpillars? Birds do. So energy is being transferred from the sun to the cabbage, from the cabbage to the caterpillar, caterpillar to the bird. Great. And then let's do the other side. So energy is going from the sun to the cabbage to the rabbits. Does anyone eat our rabbits? Yeah, snakes and hawks are going to eat our rabbits. But do you remember those small birds that ate caterpillars? Snakes and hawks are also going to eat those small birds. So it's all kind of interconnected. What would happen if one of those animals died? What do you think would happen to our food web? Pause the video for a minute, pair and share with your neighbor. So look at the people sitting around you and you're going to discuss what would happen to this story if the caterpillars died. What would the small birds eat? What would happen to them? Would anything happen to the cabbage? Would anything happen to the rabbit? You're going to pause, figure that out, talk among yourselves, and we'll reconvene. Okay, so you guys just talked about what would happen if all the caterpillars didn't exist in this scenario. Well, if there's no caterpillars, what are the small birds going to eat? So if there's no caterpillars, there's no small birds. I'm sorry, they died. Okay, but think about it. Snakes and hawks, they ate the small birds. Oh no. They'll be okay. The snakes and the hawks also eat the bunnies, so they're fine. So really, it's just the small birds that are sad. Great. So this time, let's talk about what do you think would happen if there were no small birds to begin with. We have caterpillars, but now we don't have any small birds. Would our story change? What do you guys think? Go ahead and pause the video, talk amongst your neighbors, and come up with an answer. Great. You guys just answered the question, what would happen if there were no small birds at all? I'm interested to know what you guys think. Here's what I think. If there's no small birds, there's nothing eating the caterpillars. So that means instead of just a couple caterpillars, now there's millions of caterpillars. Caterpillars are everywhere. What do you think would happen to the cabbage if there's caterpillars everywhere? You're right, all the cabbage would die. If all the cabbage is dead, what are the rabbits going to eat? The rabbits are also going to die. If all the rabbits are dead, what are the snakes going to eat? What are the hawks going to eat? Guess what? Everyone dies. The only things left are the caterpillars. But you know what? There's so many of them that they eat all the cabbage. And so suddenly, there are no cabbages and no caterpillars. Everyone is dead. Now, I forgot to mention, there is one type of organism still alive. Those are the decomposers, or aka the worms and the roly-polies and the centipedes and the slugs that were living in the soil. Guess what? They are so happy because there's all this dead material around. They are having a feast. So even though everything else died, the worms, the roly-polies, the slugs, the decomposers are very happy and they're doing just fine. Great. Okay, so that was a food web. We kind of made this whole map on how energy is transferred and how things are interconnected and how it's really important that all of our pieces of the story stay together. Like when we took out the caterpillars, all the birds died, and when we took out all the small birds, everything died. So, really important that we take care of our earth. And that kind of ties into the circle of life as well, because we as people are massive consumers of things around us. Think about it. Not only are we eating things, but we are cutting down trees in order to make paper. We suck up natural gases from the ground in order to drive our cars and make electricity to turn on the lights. We do other things too. Have you guys ever heard of overfishing? Overfishing happens when we fish way too much and more than we need to, and guess what? Suddenly there's no more fish left. If there's no more fish left, what do you think happens to all the bugs? There's so many bugs because no one is... Oh, speaking of bugs, there's like this flying thing flying on me. If there's no fish to eat all the bugs, suddenly there's going to be a ton of bugs, and then all those bugs eat all of the grass, and it goes crazy. So it's really important that we keep our food web safe and secure, and that we are good stewards of what we consume. Okay, I know that was a ton of information thrown at you guys, but there's 3 main things you need to remember. 1 is all of the energy comes from the sun. Energy everywhere initially comes from the sun, because the sun gives energy to plants and plants give energy to everything else. So all the energy comes from the sun. Good. Number 2 is plants produce energy from the sunlight, and they're called producers. Everyone say producers. Producers. Great. Producers are plants because they produce energy from the sun. Then there's things that eat plants. Those things are called consumers. Everyone say consumers. Consumers. Great. So producers make energy, they're plants. Consumers eat the plants. But when the consumers have died, what eats the consumers? The decomposers. Everyone say decomposers. Decomposers. Great. And the decomposers break all the materials down. So they break all of those dead things and they turn it into compost and they put it back in the soil. And then, guess what? Those producers, or our plants, are able to suck up nutrients from that decomposed material and helps them grow better. So far we are remembering that energy comes from the sun. Then there are 3 main characters in our food web: the producers, the consumers, and the decomposers. Okay, the 3rd thing you need to remember is that energy is transferred by what you eat. So our plants basically eat the sunlight. So energy is transferred from the sun to our plants. Now our plants transfer energy to whatever eats them. So if I was to eat this plant, it would be transferring energy from it to me. That was gross. So energy is being transferred by whoever eats whatever. It's the transfer of energy. Okay, those were the 3 things that you need to remember. You were good to go. So now you're going to do 2 things today. Thing number 1. I want you to write out or draw all the things that you have eaten today. It might be a lot. That's okay. For me, I would be drawing a piece of toast, and I would be drawing my egg, and I would be drawing a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because that is what I've eaten today. Then I want you to break all of those things down and trace it back to the sun. So, for example, I ate bread today. Bread is made from a plant. Plants get energy from the sun. My egg comes from a chicken. The chicken eats the grass. The grass gets energy from the sun. Same thing with my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So, I want you guys to map out how energy was transferred from the sun to your food to you, and break it into as many steps as possible. The more steps, the better. And it'll be really awesome to see and count who can count the most amount of steps from the sun to you. Thing number 2 is a game. So we are going to play the Decomposer Consumer Producer game. This game is basically like rock, paper, scissors, shoot, but it's extreme version. So the way this works is our producers always beat decomposers. Our decomposers always beat the consumers, but the consumers always beat the producers. So, think about it this way. Our producers are eaten by the consumer, but the consumer is eaten by the decomposers. But the decomposers break material down and put nutrients in the soil, and that is eaten by the plants, the producers. Okay, your hand movements for this game are as follows. A producer, you're going to pretend to be a blooming flower. Everyone give it a go. Be a producer. Awesome. A consumer is something that eats. So everyone, chomp, 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 chomp. That is your hand movement for consumer. Our next character is decomposer. And for a decomposer, you need to pretend to be a worm. So you got to squiggle. Alright, everyone squiggle. Decomposer. Okay, let's give it a run through. Please do the hand motions with me. Thank you. It'll help you remember, help me remember. It'll be great. Okay, so producer, consumer, decomposer, consumer, producer, decomposer. Alright, y'all are good. So the way this is going to happen is, don't move yet, wait until I finish explaining. But you're going to break into 2 lines. So I want everyone who's seated down, you're going to stand up, and you're going to split into 2 separate lines. And those lines are going to meet up at your carpet spot. Then, when your teacher says 3, 2, 1, go, on go, you guys are going to either make a producer, a consumer, or a decomposer. Then, you're going to see who wins that battle. Whoever wins that battle can go back and join their line. Whoever loses has to go take a seat. The goal of this is to be the last person standing. So you have to be careful. One more time. Producer, consumer, decomposer. I'm going to put up a screen on the board to show you who wins who, or who eats who. And you guys are going to play the ultimate battle of producer, consumer, decomposer, aka rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Alright, I hope you guys have fun, and thanks for listening today. I'll see y'all later.